What I talk about is being involved in process-driven innovation and evidence-based research that leads to innovation. The outcome isn't really the descriptor of what we do. The process is the descriptor of what we do. So the designer isn't so much the decisive author of everything. It's a collaborative process. The same kind of steps of design can be articulated whether you're building a thing or working with large and abstract concepts. Viewing the stuff on the side like that, the bottles on the side. That's more that style, this kind of content. My first degree was in environmental studies. I had this passionate interest in environmental issues and how you connect to the world. But what was missing from it for me was that portion which was exploratory and discovery. I wanted to do creative work that had some useful purpose. Just for introduction to the scenarios, to kind of set the scene for the scenarios. We're always working into the future, 2 years, 4 years, sometimes 10 years into the future. We need substantiation for what we do, so we have to gather evidence. We cast a really wide net of what we call signals. Sometimes it's just a newspaper article, sometimes it's a big report that's been done. We measure things and we ask people questions, we interview them. A technique to make sure that you're getting broad enough information is to divide it into these broad categories: society, technology, ecology, economy, politics, and values. It's just a whole environment of visual capture. So this is one day of shooting. A street side shot.
So this is the spread, this is the spread, this is the spread.
So travel.
Yes, there'll be some of that.
Or this is where we were going to do the decor
I think
elements.
this will be the different objects. So I think we'll have decor elements here.
And so do we have to do this research, or is Shelley to do that?
Shelley will do, yeah.
So when we start to put all that information together, we say, okay, here's where the real problem is, where the real opportunity is. And we say, okay, let's start to come up with new ways to solve that problem. And that's the huge creative work of design. I like to think of that as sort of unleashing something, right? It's as though like all your creative potential's been inside and kind of unleash it now that you've got all this new kind of, it's like food that you've fed the process and it unleashes your creative potential. So in the chair, I think we spent about 8 months not drawing and not modeling, really just gathering information, trying to understand what was the true problem that we were solving. We talked to nurses, physicians, the orderlies that have to move pieces around, cleaners, and we talked to a whole range of people. And from that gathering of information, we determined that really what we needed to do was create a whole line of furniture that could respond to all the requirements in the different parts of a healthcare institution. That's when we really began the idea of a modular kit of parts that could be reconfigured into a bunch of different kinds of chairs using a minimal number of components. This one is half scale, so it's exactly to scale measure, but it starts to look at what the final form relationships will be. So what's the arm like compared to the legs, compared to the seat, as it would be all assembled in space. And then we can, really look at it from all sides, try and see what it would be like looking at it from the back. Are the legs, are they splayed out too far? So it's a really, really good tool for us to try and understand way before we get into the final production of data.
So
through doing that, more volume, and then that two-sided tape could already be on there, and all we do is peel it off, right? Little things.
We typically try to design products where all the component parts are discrete, meaning that if you had to dismantle them and pull them apart and recycle any given part, that it's easy enough to do. So in the chair, when we design the chair, that's how it's built. Every single part of that chair is one material that can go back into the recycling stream. It's beautiful. I love it in that color. We try and understand what are the conditions it's going to be made in. I have children. I would hate to think that the designs that I'm making are going to cause somebody else's children to be sitting in a factory inhaling toxic fumes and standing beside scalding metal, or that in any way that people are going to be harmed because of something that I designed. I can't imagine not taking responsibility for that. Did any of the times you tested it before, did you ever get any stressing in here?
During this testing we did so far is nothing. The only issue like we have to was this. See, we changed this knuckle. The system of the assembling is different.
Oh, really? Huh? It's going straight?
The bolt is going straight right now.
How was it before? It was going in and
It was just applying from the side, the screw,
Oh, right.
and it was bolt.
Yeah, so it wasn't enough.
So it's
into
just
the
going,
stem.
it was no visible. But in this point, we go over 350 pounds.
You're kidding?
Yeah, and it's no problem.
Wow.
25 pounds each.
Oh, God.
It's 225 pounds.
So Adam has so much knowledge embedded in his mind about how a chair has to function. He's been working for so long. How would I ever have the amount of knowledge that he has? So I figured really early on that if I could tap into him sharing that information, I could become more knowledgeable. And if I was trying to do really front-edge, innovative work, I was going to meet resistance, better to meet resistance with deep knowledge. I think it just makes you a better designer at the end of the day.
This chair is taking lots of punishment.
We don't always talk about what we do as design. We talk about it as creative thinking. It doesn't matter if I'm making a bag or a chair or a plan for city building. All of those are creative problem solving. That's so great. I love it.
Yeah, it's a wine tasting, but it would be an in-store wine tasting.
At the beginning of my career as a maker of things, I really authored things more or less by myself, and as my career has progressed, I'm never the sole author of anything. I work very much with the team that works in my studio, and with our clients, and with the wider world too. Like they're sort of co-participants, co-creators of whatever the outcome is. It feels more architectural when the quilting goes all the way around. And because it doesn't look like cardboard, it looks like it could be a textile almost. So I think that that's part of what's interesting about it, is using it in a completely different way. Design Thinkers. It's a conference that designers from around the world attend. And every year they commission a bag. And so they asked us this year if we would be interested in designing something. So it probably takes one whole sheet.
Yeah.
We thought, wouldn't it be really great to see if you could do the whole bag and have it strong enough, made out of completely recyclable paper, every part of it, and that the life cycle of whatever we did was able to go back into the recycling chain. And I'm not so worried about people wanting to necessarily use it as a bag again. Maybe they'll just use it as a container afterwards. That's the
Pretty
biggest.
cool, and I can almost guarantee it's not at all what they're thinking it's going to be.
No,
which
those
is
other ones,
awesome.
they just look like-
They just look like boxes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I don't want to show it too soon.
No.
We
I
want to
think you have
have
to
it
meet
much
with-
farther
Yeah.
along, so
We
we
need
should
to
meet
meet
first.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other one was 39, the new one is 37, so I've taken an inch off both, so it just makes the straps a little bit shorter overall.
Yeah, that's not
So,
a problem, is it?
I don't
It's
think
a
so.
threading problem.
And the color is beautiful. I have a degree in environmental studies with a focus on resource management. I've always really been interested in trying to figure out how principles of resilience and sustainability could be built into the products that we design. You know, sometimes people think of designing from an environmental perspective as an add-on to the work that we do, but for us here, it's sort of an assumed. Not every client cares about that, so we don't actually make a big fuss about it. That's how we source. We look for that kind of thing, and we just make sure that it's a given within the work that we do.
If we score from this side and flip the screen over, the screen will be over here. The glue will be on, and it should
Oh,
fold the right way.
So you glue it
No, no,
here.
Yeah, the
It
glue will be
goes
on this
here.
side.
Okay, but so it's not
Yep. Like when this was designed, it was designed to have glue on the outside of this tab. But we switched that this morning because we have to glue on this side.
Well, it's over
We
this
don't want to do two passes of glue, so instead we're going
Right,
on
okay.
this
Yeah.
instead of on that.
It's really good. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the sideways ones work way better.
The team that works with me now, they've worked side by side with me for 10 years, a lot of them. They completely understand how my kind of weird free association mind works, and they're amazing translators. And they really have that capacity to take ideas and to run with it and add into it and not be so possessive about it being their own, and have it kind of grow into something bigger. And that's a great thing. In a way, it's kind of it's liberating not to have to be solely identified with whatever the thing is. It kind of keeps your ego in check. Maybe it's a good thing.
If we had to, we could have all the bags assembled and just do the straps on the weekend. That'd be good. Or the straps could be inside. Do it yourself.
I'm inspired by the intellectual challenge of the work that I do and by the creative challenge of what I do. I'm really interested in taking what I learned in one area and then applying it to the next area. Discovery is fundamental. It's like the core of who I am. I hardly ever in my career have done the same thing twice. I think that's how I maintain my level of excitement. The interest for me is the problem solving. We still work in the same way, big or small. So it's a soap dispenser, and what we're trying to test in this one is whether or not the mechanism that we have designed will contain the soap that is inside it without letting it drip. So I'm just going to fill the chamber with some soap. Working on how you dispense soap can be a complex problem, but working on how you design a livable city is a much more complex problem.
So Eric Sanderson is the guy that did the initial research.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so he did this project over 15, 17 years. And he just mapped it, he explored it, he put together this beautiful book, and he put together the website. So the question is, what from the data would designers actually want to access? How would they access that, and how would they be able to use it? Which becomes our question.
Our Ask Place project is a tool to better understand place. And it's based on the flow of how an ecosystem works.
The basic premise is location-specific biological information to empower designers to achieve biomimicry ideas that are sustainable. So,
this project started as a collaboration between my studio and a group from Montana called Biomimicry 3.8, an organization that's been looking at ways to try and bring nature back into the conversation about the creation of new spaces in the world and new objects in the world. And the project dovetailed with another project that's being explored in Manhattan called the Manhattan Project. So we should organize a time to get down and meet with Eric and Tim together.
mm-hmm.
The Manhattan Project. Eric Sanderson, who is an amazing conservation ecologist, has been building a huge database of ecological information about the island of Manhattan based on the original conditions of what Manhattan was 400 years ago. And we're really interested in creating a tool that now other people could engage in that information for a different set of needs.
If that's the kind of ecosystem that would have been here if we hadn't built a city, how could we use the performance of that ecosystem as inspiration and design criteria for designing the future of any city?
When we were talking yesterday, I talked about it as a tool for change, right? And so publicly available tool for change, a platform essentially that people can go to, and who knows what, entrepreneurial venture will come from it, or new way of thinking, what integrated outcome, and it doesn't matter. And so how can we make it so that the impact of it is beyond hearts and minds and into action? And so a piece of that is talking to people and saying, and how could you understand this better, and then put it into your work, make it first principle in your work.
And what you're working toward depends as much on your goals as the science. In fact, it doesn't really even depend on the science. It depends on your goals. And then once you figure out what the goal is, then science can help you figure out how you get there. Hopefully, whatever we build for Manhattan, eventually we can scale up to the whole extent of New York City.
The fact that this is a fairly abstract concept with no physical, tangible thing that comes out of it doesn't mean that there's not going to be some level of prototyping and interaction and testing and feedback and all of those things, the same as we would do with a chair. So the design of the built environment should aspire to perform, not replace the city, but aspire to perform at least as well, if not better, than the ecosystems that the city replaced. So today around the table we had an architect, an urban planner, a sustainability consultant, someone who works for one of the largest real estate developers in Manhattan. We had designers and information graphics people and a biologist. But there's another really critical part, we think, is how do you communicate all this information in ways that people can use it. But in order to do that, we kind of need to know what are the ways that people might use it, or would anybody use it?
In its initial phases, there might be bewilderment or overwhelm or what the heck or so what. But maybe if you create those pathways, or as I say, a dashboard that says these are some of the big takeaways at a glance that you would learn from this kind of data.
So it's just a beginning point. And what we're trying to do is find out what people need to know, figure out how to help them to access the information, and give them a platform to add to the information.
So critical.
And that's part of the design portion of this exploration, so that there is the data capture piece. So
Well, we're just about to wrap up.
We think that we'll probably end up with a multi-platform tool. So it might be a website, might have film components, have a book, and it might have workshops, and it might have a whole array of different ways for people to access and understand this information about this place. And if we can do that in this place, we could recreate it in other places.
See all the scores here? They all have to be cracked. That's how you get the...
every single one.
Yeah. And once you crack it the other way, you'll see that it starts to take shape.
Okay.
Flip it over, and then we have a bottom.
Can't wait to get the straps.
There's the first.
I used to have this big statement on the wall. Dream big, do good, spread joy. And that really is true for me. Those are my really honest, true objectives in the world. Do good, dream big, spread joy. Perfect.
And I did this, I did the stool.
And the stool too?
Stool too.
Who are users of place, so people who are residents, people who visit a place, who invests in place.
In a lot of ways, you can make a much bigger change quietly from the inside than loudly on the outside. You can make change the other way too, but it is nice to be able just to see the impact and the spread of what you've done and the amount of change that you can create.